Kanye West is one example. Through success, it seems to have made him less connected, less empathetic in many ways. And you go on Twitter, there is often an incentive there to be less empathetic. And a lot of people have gotten real world gains out of that. So to defend Damon Young, I would say that you're still making a choice to go in that direction of becoming a better person. Whereas there are incentives in other parts of the world. Or we can look at the president as an extreme example. A lack of empathy has gotten him vocal support in some sectors.
Well, and that ties back to the concept of incentive, because throughout his life, he always had his incentive to continue to be the person that he is, where it's been reinforced. It was reinforced by his dad. It was reinforced by people around him, his family, and then reinforced by the people who, when he became, successful or whatever, wanted to be around him. And so he's never been like disincentivized, to be anything other than what he is today. And for, incentive works differently for a 70-year-old, privileged white man, than it does for a 40-year-old black, 40-year-old nigga from the hood. And it's all right. It's pivot, and this will take a bit longer, so I'm just going to touch on this a little bit here. I have a theory about Kanye.
Okay.
I want to save for a book right now, but I've been working through this, and so all right, I had been a member, a resident, a landowner on Kanye Island for forever. Like when people talk, make this distinction between the old Kanye and the new Kanye, and I guess new Kanye started after 808s, when people make that distinction with his music. Thinking, college dropout, graduation, late registration, that's the old Kanye.
Wait. Oh, when is the Dark Twisted? So Dark Twisted Fantasy is the new Kanye?
I think when people think of the new Kanye, they consider 808s the start of the new Kanye.
Okay.
When this conversation happens in people's heads, or online or out loud, about the new Kanye, the old Kanye, whatever. And I think that his best work I think new Kanye has created his best work, because I think My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is one of the top 5 hip hop albums that's ever been created, and
it's a work of genius.
Yeah, and I love these.
I say that very reluctantly because I'm not on Kanye Island.
Yeah, and I love these. And so, but the thing, so just getting back to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, when people talk about, Kanye is broken right now. Okay, he is. Like his head, his actions, he's having these mental health issues, but he also has this anti-blackness that is existing within him, and all of these things are connecting, and he's also making more money now than he ever has because of his clothes. So this is just a very volatile and very dangerous concoction that is happening right now. And so people are talking about like the shift in Kanye, like, okay, what quote unquote broke him? They refer to his mom passing, and that kind of decentering him. Sometimes people refer to Kim Kardashian's influence on him, which is some bullshit, really, because, if anything, I don't want to be up here defending Kim Kardashian, but she seems to have, I don't know, been a positive influence on him. It's a really weird thing to say out loud, but I think the thing that turned Kanye was My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and chasing white validation from that. Because I think, you remember he had the video, he had the movie for that. He came out with a 35-minute long movie. It's still on YouTube. Kind of Beyonce's Lemonade and all of that, where he had a movie. And I think he expected this album to be his Thriller.
Yeah.
To be the album that doesn't just get critical lauds, but is an essential part of the culture of the zeitgeist from that moment forward. And it's still acknowledged critically as a great album. It still won some Grammys. And I think he still sold, 2 or 3 million copies of it. But 2 or 3 million copies is not 20 million.
It's not, yeah.
And he didn't win the big Grammys, like Record of the Year, Album of the Year, Song of the Year. Like the biggies. He didn't win any of those. And I think that chasing that sort of validation did a thing to him.
I think
go ahead.
I think there's I don't know. I
it's a theory. I'll say it's a theory that I am still workshopping in my head.
There's something to that in that it came to a point where he decided that as Malcolm X would say, the white man's ice is colder. And there was a point where he started using the white voice in the interviews. That was so bizarre. And he started openly begging white billionaires, to invest in his stuff. And it was kind of like I think Kiese may have an essay about this, or I'm not sure, but there was someone who had an essay about him chasing this white validation, and it just became, to me, it became very, very sad up to that point where it's kind of like you're sort of discounting a lot of what brought him here, in the colloquial. You forgot where he came from. You started discounting that, the culture that he is a part of to try to chase that ring. And at this juncture, there was a point where I was very, just like, fuck Kanye. But I do think that that particular mental illness that he says he suffers from has the reputation of turning it almost I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but it turning it almost like installing a new system within you. Whereas you see people suffering from this, and they're saying things that they wouldn't say. And you don't, it's hard for me to say, what is where that begins, where Kanye begins, and this problem is this mental illness is sort of taking over. So I've tried to recede from outward criticisms, and there's a certain point where I was like, there's anti-blackness and there's mental illness, and they're not connected. But I think that's a little too simplistic. I think that there's I think that his outward anti-blackness is weaved in with this mental illness, and we have to approach it with empathy, and not laughter, and sort of ignore it, and sort of almost ignore it, and hopefully he gets the help that he needs. Yeah, I mean, I think that album, and I bailed off Kanye Island after College Dropout. I just couldn't do it anymore.
You weren't there so you weren't there at all, basically.
I went back and listened to these albums.
You left after College Dropout.
I went back and listened to these albums. 808 and Heartbreaks is one of my favorite albums right now. I listen to it a lot. Dark Twisted Fantasy is a work of genius, and what you say is true. Is it's true that it's a work of genius, and it's true that I think that he thought that this was going to get him the thrill of validation. It's not, to me, it's not an album that you listen to every day. It's an album you admire rather than an album you live. Like Thriller and Off the Wall, you lived those albums. You admire Dark Twisted Fantasy.
And I think that gets to the point about just the danger of chasing that white validation, that mainstream validation, because then you create work that is inherently self-conscious. Not all work is self-conscious to a point, but but when you are chasing that validation, and that is your only audience, or the most important audience, you're creating a work that is self-consciously concerned with how it'll be perceived by white people, and that is just an insufficient way of creating things. You create a thing that is meant to be awarded, meant to be admired, but not meant to be felt.
Wow. Yeah.
And there are some songs on Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy that I do return to, like Hell of a Life. I return to that a lot. But yeah, as far as the album totality, it is an album that is very self-consciously award me. Look at all the I'm putting Daft Punk and Rihanna on the same track. Look at this. Don't you see what I'm doing with this? And Rick, I'm putting Daft Punk, Rihanna, Rick Ross, and Drake, and Elton John on the same track, and then Chris Rock. Okay, yeah. And so yeah, that I think yes, the conversation about Kanye's anti-blackness cannot exist without an accompanying conversation about mental illness. And there are people who are more equipped to have that conversation than I am. Like Basi Akbi has written beautifully about bipolar disorder. Danielle Belton, who's the EIC at the Root, has also written about her, dealing with being bipolar, and also written about Kanye and the connection to that. But aside from that, I just think that he is a cautionary tale of what happens when Black people chase white validation.
Yeah.
And your work might be awarded, your work might be lauded, but your work may also not be as robust as it could possibly be. And then it's like a dog chasing a tail. There's always going to be another thing. There's always going to be another level of this validation that you're going to be trying to reach and trying to get, and you're just never going to get. So you'll never be satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah.